So just before we get into, I guess, the crux of this war and what you guys have been doing, can you just introduce who you are and your experience and everything else?
My name's Troy Offenbecker. I did 6 years in the U.S. Marines. I went to Fallujah in 2006. Was there until 2007. After that, I did training evolution, so I traveled around and did like counterterrorism, jungle warfare training for multiple other countries. After that, I joined the Peshmerga. I fought alongside them near Kirkuk, Iraq. And there was a short lull in between that, and now I'm here.
Can you explain to us what the Peshmerga is, for those who don't understand?
The Kurdish Peshmerga. Back when I got in, they were one of the few units that were fighting ISIS at the time in the autonomous region of Kurdistan.
Yeah.
So we were near the border, different than the Syrian Kurds, the Ypg or YPG.
Yeah. And how much combat did you see with them?
A little bit. My first night there, we were in the battle for Kirkuk. So the first night we were there in our area, we actually we killed around 600 ISIS.
Oh. And how much, I guess, combat, urban clearances were you involved in your time in Fallujah?
That's all we did. So I was at Camp Train Station, and we ran operations out of there. A little bit further down the road, we had our COC, the CMOC, but we did a lot of nighttime raids, a lot of contact patrols. So we'd walk around throughout the day, get fired at, and then take it from there. A lot of vehicle operations, which made us deal with IEDs and things like that. But the majority of what I did, we predominantly did like building and house clearing.
So firstly, mate, thank you so much for sitting down and having a chat to me. And you've been in the works for a little bit now. But I'm just interested, being a former soldier myself, of why you chose, as a soldier, to come over and fight for Ukraine and potentially lay down your life.
Yeah, it's kind of a tough answer, but the short is, as a soldier, you understand we like to help. I felt the calling to come here, so. I feel like that's a bullshit answer. You hear it a lot, but I couldn't sit home after seeing the news, what they did in Bucha and stuff like that. So to just sit around and know that people were being fucking murdered, and I don't know, man. It's really a tough question, to be honest. Why I came is, I felt similar, like why I joined the Peshmerga. I didn't understand why I felt the need I had to go. It was just something that I had to do at the end of the day. But I guess I could give the cliche answer to kill Russians, but it was just something I felt that was calling me in the end. I had to.
And has that expectation and reality, how's that been lived up to?
The expectation hasn't been lived out yet. There's a lot of things that haven't went the way I thought they would. It's a different kind of war here, but like we talked, I didn't think it was going to be an attrition war or an artillery war, so that was unexpected. But getting here and everything was good. The people were supportive. It was easy to kind of find a team and blend in, fit in. But when it comes down to the operations, the expectation wasn't there.
Right. So with that expectation not met, are you just continuing to grind on and do your stuff, or have you thought about, well, it hasn't met what I thought, I'll pop smoke and leave?
Yeah, no, I'm not going anywhere. I'll be here, hopefully, make it till the end of the war at least.
Yeah.
I think things will change eventually. It's been a slow process. Like we discussed, some of the leadership, they're finally understanding the way that we do things in the Western world and why they're a lot more effective. So I think slowly but surely, if I stick it out, things will go my way.
And what is it you feel that needs to change to have a better effect from the Legion?
From the Legion, or just from?
Well, from any standpoint, like your experience with the Legion or your experience with the command structure.
I think in the Legion we need to be a little bit more autonomous and on our own, not have to rely on the Ukrainians so much, so we can kind of show them how we do it and why it's so effective. From like my personal standpoint, we have good gear, we have good kit, which is a rarity in a volunteer world, but we're just not always given the chance to use it. So if we were allowed to do things the way that we would like to operate, instead of staying static and getting bombed and shit like that, actually push, I think things would change a lot more. But yeah.
So at that front, because there's been very little, I guess, media coming out of the front, is it more static and the shelling?
Yeah, there's a lot of downtime.
Yeah.
Just a lot of sitting around waiting, to either get fucking smashed on or just wait for a mission. Now, obviously, things are changing with all the offensives, but for the longest time, the front was just, wait for a big mission when, like myself and my guys, would rather be doing smaller things, at least to keep the momentum going, stay moving. I don't know if it's my team selectively, but they kind of hold us for more Gucci stuff. They like to put us on bigger ops, so you have like a longer lull between things.
And when you talk that you'd rather small ops, what sort of things you're alluding to?
Saboteur, harassing, smaller villages, things that are attainable. Some of the operations I can't really say things about, but bigger ops that you need a lot more planning and time put into it than what they're gonna have allotted. So it just seems like it's not achievable at the moment. Where if we go into a village and try to take it back with our forces, it's actually attainable. It's something that would be tangible and reachable, but we don't always get those missions.
Right.
So.
And why do you think that is?
I honestly don't know. I think they want us with our training for higher operations, but they should also understand that, even lower level things we need to be a part of.
And there's been a lot of talk through both, like the Kiev Independent release and so the Wall Street Journal, about a large amount of corruption within the Legion. Is that something that you think may be Legion-wide, or was that specific to that commander and his guys? Have you experienced any of that?
I haven't personally. I've heard similar. I think, like anyone in power, they become corrupt. So certain billets and things, I'm sure there is corruption, and I've heard about it, but I haven't personally had to deal with it. I've heard, some of the South American teams were having their pay taken and things like that, so they weren't actually getting paid when they were supposed to be. People's things were coming up missing and things like that. Money was being shelved somewhere other than where it was supposed to go. But I can't individually talk about it because I don't see that from where I'm at. I haven't had to deal with it. Where my team, we don't really work with all the other teams in the Legion, so we haven't had to deal with the corruption aspect of it, but I have heard a lot from when I've got here to now, and I've met people face to face that were explaining the corruption and things.
Right.
So I trust them. I don't think they would lie to me about it.
Mm. And the makeup of your team, are they mostly Americans or?
My last team was. My team right now is about half British, half American. We have a few from other countries.
Yeah. And what's the experience level of these guys?
Most of the guys, well, every guy in my team's pretty well infantry trained. Some of them come from special forces backgrounds. I would say, 3/4 of us have a reasonable amount of combat experience and time on the ground fighting.
Yeah. And how have their expectations of this been met? Or are you all sort of in the same boat as you feel like you could be used in a better capacity?
Yeah, I think we all do. Nobody wants to bitch about it. We're here, we're volunteering, so it's not like it's going to be, the U.S. or the British military where the intelligence levels and things are set higher. The baseline is higher.
Yeah.
Here, things are different. We operate a lot differently here. The expectations for fighting, a lot of the guys we all agree it really hasn't been met, but that, in a sense, isn't our fault either. The Russians, they don't like a good fight. They would rather pull back and bomb the shit out of stuff and just destroy it before they lose it.
And can you talk about that? Because we spoke before about some of the ground taken was more given up by the Russians, so then they could pull back and then just flatten it. Is that correct?
Yeah, that happens often. If they start to lose, it's kind of similar to what ISIS would do, where they would just pull back and kill the civilians and leave. Here, they just pull back and drop bombs. They'll level it, and instead of losing it, similar to what they said about, I heard what they said about the power plant kind of thing is, if they can't have it, no one's going to kind of thing. And I think that is the way their mindset is for all these villages and in the land that they've taken. Is if the Ukrainians start to make an advance, they like to pull back and just fucking level everything.
And do you feel like, being engaged in those operations, that Ukraine are having an effect, that they are pushing back the Russians, or is it at this point, I guess, who's winning the war, or is it could go either way at this point, in your opinion?
My personal opinion, I think it's a stalemate right now. Neither side really has advanced much, and it's a lot of static, a lot of just sitting and shelling. It's hard because you have different areas where some of the Ukrainians fight and push forward, but then they get bombed back, or even vice versa. But I think from what I've seen in the places I've been, it's just kind of fucking lose-lose on both sides right now.
And how much have you dealt with casualties from the Legion and or from the Ukrainians? Is that very common where you are?
We've had a few. Before I got to my team, we actually lost 2 guys. I was supposed to go to Severodonetsk and meet them, and that was right as they blew the last bridge, so we couldn't get to them. A guy that was in the team I'm in now, Jordan, he was killed by a sniper, and then the commander of my last team, he was killed. He was shot in the neck. But with the Ukrainians, it seems like they have a lot of casualties. They get a lot more than we do. I don't know if it's a training thing or I guess maybe sheer luck, but we haven't taken nearly as many casualties as I thought we would have by now.
And when you've come up against these Russians, or your friends have come up against these Russian soldiers, it's been portrayed a lot through some propaganda channels and some media that they're all just incredibly incompetent, untrained. Is that true on the most part, or are some of them very well versed and trained and willing to fight?
In the smaller villages, they have like the DNR and stuff that they're not as good. And I think a lot of that might not even be the training, it's just the morale. They're fucking getting one MRE a day, the Russians are, so their morale is just really low. It's like they don't want to fight. My team was in a fight a few weeks ago, and they had 8 surrender, and they didn't want to fight. You could tell from one of my buddies that were there. Once they realized they were surrounded, they were pretty quick to give up.
Right.
There were 8. 1 died from his wounds, so my team captured 7. But we're kind of lower level guys. It's a smaller village, so you don't really expect the Spetsnaz or anything to be in there waiting for us.
Yeah, yeah. And how was the treatment once they surrendered? Were they treated as if any other POW?
Yeah, from our guys, we have that NATO. So, like I said, the one that was wounded, he was wounded pretty bad. My doc gave him morphine so he could go out peacefully, without pain. The other ones had shrapnel wounds. My medics treated them before they were taken. So I would say they got beyond fair treatment for what this war has been.
Yeah. And you said in the beginning that you saw this war unfolding and Russia, on the TV bombing civilian areas and whatever. Have you seen personally a lot of that happening where there's no military targets and they're blatantly bombing areas just to create damage?
Yeah. 3 of the locations I've been to, we've seen quite a bit of it. They're bombing civilian complexes. They bombed, near buses, just fucking anywhere. There was a shawarma place that we would go to every once in a while, and they shot a fucking cruise rocket at the building next to it that was full of civilians. So they were definitely not military targets or even identifiable as any. So when I was in Mykolaiv, they were bombing just in the city indiscriminately. So there's still a lot of that going on. Civilians being targeted or just just kind of lofting rockets into wherever they choose.
So when a lot of people say that, and I get this through comments and feedback and whatever, is that they're somewhat doing that because the Ukrainian military and or the Foreign Legion is taking up like barracks within civilian buildings without clearing the civilians out first. Is it in your experience, is there any truth in those claims, or is that part and parcel with urban warfare?
No, my team, our team, we don't shelter in with civilians. For us, it's a risk, so we try to stay away from them, which I guess is safer for us on both ends. But no, we don't put ourselves in with civilians, and specifically if they do find us and bomb us, there'll be more civilian casualties on top of it. So we've always tried to stay away.
It's becoming more and more, I guess, reported through the front line of now civilian, like Russian civilian partisans. Like, they'll see reporters or troop movements and whatever, and it's being reported that they will then, phone up the Russians and call in targets or even pop off some rounds towards them. Have you experienced much of that?
Yeah. There's actually a lot of that happens. We've had a lot of pro-Russian civilians give away our positions. They're really inquisitive when they see us in the area, and that's part of the reason we try to stay away from civilian areas as well. As there are a lot of pro-Russians still to the east and to the south. So we've had it happen more than a handful of times where they've recorded us, sent out videos, or turned in our location, and we've been bombed shortly after. So,
and without trying to spill any OPSEC, whatever, is your team planning any more of these operations where you can sort of go out, like you said, in smaller teams, I guess, behind the line and conduct raids? Is that always something you're planning and doing?
Yeah, I mean, that's never off the table, especially with the way things are here. With the way that we, like Westerners, operate, smaller units and more harassing and things. So, yeah, I can't say much, but I think the future is going to hold a lot more smaller unit tactics than bigger groups, and specifically just because we can't rely on the resupplies and the things when we operate with bigger units.
Yeah.
Or the support. We just don't get the support that's...
So how has that support been? Because I had another foreign fighter on my channel previously, and he was saying that we were told that there would be artillery and Kazakh, and that once we got in contact, just seemingly disappeared and had to basically steal a car at gunpoint to actually get wounded out. Is that been similar to your experience?
Very much so. Yeah, there's a really big lack of support. There's always the commander's intent that we have support, and I don't think it falls on our commander. I think it goes higher. But I mean, we've been promised certain avenues or routes or resupplies, and they don't come through. So yeah, I can agree with what he said, and on a personal opinion, I strongly agree with that.
Right. And you fought in Fallujah. How does this compare to the combat you witnessed there?
It's a 180. Fallujah, we had IEDs, we had suicide vehicles, but they were more up for a fight. Where here, it's just, everyone just wants to drop bombs. Nobody's up for a real good fight. And if we start getting in one, then they pull back and level things. So it's a 180-degree difference from what I'm used to.
And how do you feel about potentially laying down your life out here? How have you come to terms with that?
I don't want to sound arrogant, but the day I bought my ticket, I came to terms with that. So it's always at the back of my mind, but it's not something I try to think about daily.
And what does your friends and family think about this back home?
I have support, but I don't think any of them like it. So, I mean, they're supportive of me while I'm here and doing what we do, but, I don't think they're happy that I'm here.
And does that ever worry you? Or you, in your heart of hearts have come to terms that you're doing the right thing for, I guess, freedom and democracy?
Yeah. It's not going to change the way I feel about being here. I'm sorry that I put him through worries, but it doesn't change the way I feel.
So what do you think the future holds for the Legion? Because I've been hearing rumours that things are getting shut down, but do you think the future is... Are you still having guys recruiting in, or have the numbers started to dry up?
We've pushed out a lot of the bad apples,
right,
which is a good thing. A lot of people giving the Legion a bad name. From what I've heard recently, I think the Legion's going to get stronger. I don't necessarily mean number-wise, but training-wise and within our small groups and small units. I think it's going to be here for a long time. So they're going to finally start utilizing our potential and letting us do what we do best. And I can't speak for the rest of the teams in the Legion, but I know my team isn't going anywhere.
Right. I guess, is there anything else you want to talk about while you're here, as far as some operations you've been on? Is there any operations you've been on that you can discuss with myself?
Yeah, there's a couple. So when I first got out east, we were kind of static just because the bridge was blown. We were supposed to be going into Severodonetsk. Once we got our guys out, we were, just trying to find missions, trying to find things to do. And myself and 3 other members of the Legion went on a reconnaissance with some of the engineers to place anti-tank mines and scout the area out, because I'm not going to say where, but across this smaller river there was a really fortified and big Russian position. And as we were coming up to it to try to place mines and things, we actually had a Bayraktar fly over us and fucking smash their position pretty good. So, I mean, that was for a small op or reconnaissance, it turned out pretty well. But the information that we got on their positions from some of the some of the Ukrainian army that was on the front there, they helped us with our MTAC, or, I don't know if I can talk about that, but they helped us with our mapping to plot the locations of their positions with almost exact grid coordinates. And the Ukrainian commander that I had at the time didn't want to do anything about it, which is really frustrating because we had 3 pretty prominent positions we knew they were going to try to utilize to cross this river, and we sat there for another week and we didn't do shit about it. So, I mean, that was pretty frustrating. But I went out a few days in a row and got some reconnaissance on Russian positions and what kind of weaponry and things they had there, how many tanks or BTRs they had. So it's just, even if we have good intel here, the Ukrainians aren't always letting us utilize, or they don't want to like piggyback off it and do something good. It's, I think a lot of the missions, I'll probably get in trouble for saying this, but I think a lot of the leadership wants missions that are going to give them glory instead of just smaller unit things or small operations that are key to winning a fight. I don't think they see that yet. They still have that old tactics of just bomb the fuck out of everything, or attrition when this is a war for land. So as much as we can grab, the better.
Yeah, so more bomb everything and pull back rather than, I guess, seize and hold ground.
Yeah.
Would you recommend to people to come over and fight if they're thinking about it?
No. When we have an influx of people come in, you get a lot of guys that are not skilled, or they're not a good asset to the teams that we have here, and it's more of a liability. So, the guys that have been highly trained or been in a lot of combat environments, I'm all for it. But some of the mix that we found out here, just a personal opinion, I think a lot of them should be doing something else.
You think they're searching for something out here rather than here to do the job?
I think so. I mean, it's kind of in all of us to try to find some value to life, and maybe this is the easy way for them to show up and find a reason or something. But I've come across a lot of guys that just didn't have the training or the skill set, and they shouldn't be here. So I'm kind of 50-50, with it, where I would like more fighters here and highly trained fighters, guys that have been through some shit. But at the end of the day, it seems like from the beginning, we've had a lot of LARPers, as we call them. A lot of guys that they just they don't know what they're doing. I mean, I get messages on social media where people are trying to ask me to come over here, and they're saying, I've done this field for 20 years, or I fucking hunt rabbits. And it's not relative to what we do here. You're not gonna bring any asset to us. So I ask them kindly to stay away.
Yeah.
But the guys that do have a real valuable skill set, I'm all for it. It's just we have too many weeds to pick out as it is from the garden, where I don't recommend coming here. And those that do, they'll find out real quick. It's not Call of Duty. It's not hunting rabbits. It's life or death, and
So for someone who's never been to war, what is war like here in Ukraine? What's the reality of war?
It's savage. It's brutal. It's hard to explain to someone that's never been there, but it's not something you want to be a part of if you haven't done it before. I mean, honestly, I don't really want to be here either. I just feel the need, like I have to. So people that tell you they enjoy war, they're probably bullshitting you. So if you haven't been around it, stay the fuck away.
And what's your feeling towards the Russian soldiers? Is it that you here fight out of hatred, or is there some level of empathy towards, a lot of these guys aren't here voluntary? What's your feeling towards these guys?
I'm indifferent. The things that they've done, I don't think there's any forgiveness or anything for that. I'd like to see them, killed for that. But at the end of the day, not all of them want to be here. So I guess, your word, I could have a little bit of empathy for them getting sent here, but it's their choice to rape women. It's their choice to kill children. And if they're doing that, I have no light in my heart. I have nothing but hatred for them.
And how common is that? Is this a common thing, or is it a 1%?
I'd say it's a little more than 1%, but I don't think it's extremely common now with social media, with cameras being everywhere and people being able to expose what happens. It's harder for them to get away with. But in the beginning of the war, I have friends that were here, and there were a lot of civilians that were killed that didn't need to be, a lot of people tortured that didn't need to be. A lot of horrible things happened to women and children that never had to or shouldn't have. So I don't know how much it still happens, but I would like to hope that it's fizzling out because of things like social media and people being able to push out the stories on it.
Yeah. And have you had, other than the guys surrendered to you last time, is a Russian soldiers surrendering a common thing?
When they get left, and they actually have to fight, when they pull back and just bomb everything, it's, they don't care. But a lot of the guys are, from what my team has seen and stuff, a lot of them are not wanting to die. So, surrender is the easier option. And
have many Ukrainians been surrendering to the Russians if they've been caught in the wrong place?
Not from what I've heard. And I don't think they get much of an opportunity to surrender from the Russians. I don't think the Russians take as many prisoners as they'd like you to believe.
Yeah. And what's the feeling with winter around the corner, and the cliche winter is coming? What's the feeling around that? Do you think the war will slow down or grind to a halt? Or
I definitely think it's going to slow down with smaller tactics and things, but I think the bombing is going to increase. I think there's going to be a lot more shelling. That's just what they do. But I don't think there are going to be like a lot of assaults or really much movement gaining or losing ground, just because I've heard the winters here are real bad, so no one really likes to move, and no one really wants to fight in the cold, so it'll probably slow down. I don't see it coming to a halt. I think there's still going to be a lot of shelling, and like I said, both sides, I think, treat it as a war of attrition, so I think they're going to still continue to fight that way, but movements and gaining or losing, I don't see a lot of that happening in the winter.
Yeah. And have you seen personally much of the Western support, weapons, everything on the front? And what more do you think the West could do? Do you think they are doing enough?
Yeah, I've seen a lot of the weaponry. My team itself has some pretty decent weapons because of it. I guess the next step would be for them to get involved and put boots on the deck, but I don't see that happening. Obviously, it's not going to happen. The weaponry has been great. It's definitely helped. So if they could keep that coming in, it would be very much appreciated by us.
And what more, how much more do you think that they would need before they really start having a major offensive effect?
The HIMARS are great. We, with our unit, more Stingers and things like that would be nice. More Javelins, Stingers. AT-4s are always great. A lot of anti-armor weaponry would be beneficial. We have the kit we need. We have rifles, so smaller level things we're pretty good on in the Legion. But when it comes to fighting against armor, we need quite a bit more to be as effective as we can.
And have you come up against a lot of modern Russian equipment? I think it's been seen, and I've sort of had this opinion myself, and of course it's just my opinion, that there seems to be a lot of older Russian Soviet era equipment being used, T-72s, whatever. Have you had, or your teams had much experience with more modern equipment, modern helicopters, and say T-90 plus tanks? Is there much of that? Or because people are theorising that it's just old backwards shit that they're throwing at this. Is that a correct assumption or incorrect?
The ground armor seems to be a little bit older, but the air, it's good to go. I mean, every time they've brought out their helicopters against us, it's been their newer, nastier shit that's harder to defeat. So that was kind of why I keyed off on Stingers. Is in order to take out any of their air, you have to fire a couple missiles at a time. So if we only have one Stinger in the Ting, it's more of a flag we hold up where we're at instead of actually accomplishing anything. So.
And why is it you need to fire more than one Stinger at their aircraft?
The Russian aircrafts. So I got a little bit of a brief on it, but their cloaking system and their what it would be like an ECM or something.
Yes.
It's obviously their flares as well. So when you shoot one rocket, they flare, and with their new helicopters, there's actually like a bubble system. So you need one rocket to kind of throw that off, so the second can penetrate through it, or else it just they detonate outside of it.
Yeah.
So it doesn't even come close to it, from what I've heard.
Right.
We haven't had a chance to fire. Like I've said, we need quite a few more Stingers and things before we try to fire on any air without repercussions.
Yeah. So when you're seeing this air, you're all going around and trying to stay unseen rather than trying to hit it.
Yeah.
How much are they using their fast air? Because, as far as fighter jets, bombers, one of the gentlemen, another foreign fighter I had on here, he said that the Russians are using a lot of their ground equipment, soldiers' armour, but he said they're really holding off on their air force, and he said that he doesn't really know why they're doing it. But have you had much experience with the fast air assets Russia has?
Yeah, I haven't seen much. I mean, it sounds, from what I've seen, it sounds a lot like what he said, where their air is kind of pulled back. I don't know the logic behind it, but I've only seen fixed wing a couple times, and they weren't doing much. So it was more of like we would do in the Corps, like a show of force kind of thing.
And does that in any way concern you that Russia may be holding back that equipment, that it may not be, because a lot of people hold the idea that it's incompetence, they're not using it, or the equipment is broken down and not as up to scratch as it may be thought. But is there any concern of this is part of their tactic and that stuff will be deployed to what the power we may have thought Russia was before this war?
Yeah, I think it's more concerning than anything not seeing it, because you usually play your last card best. So just waiting for it to come out. To me, I'm concerned why they're not utilizing more fixed wing or air. So I guess we'll find out in the future.
Yeah. And to what effect are these Western weapons? I myself have, I'm like Javelin qualified, but I've never, of course, I haven't actually shot one, nor have I shot one of a Russian tank. What sort of effect are those weapons having? Are they doing their job that they were made to do? Are they very effective against the armour, or are they soaking up a few before they kill them?
From what my team has done and my sister team, they're really effective. Even just the Matador. One of my friends took out a BTR with a Matador rocket. So the anti-armor is effective if you know how to utilize it and where to hit on the vehicles.
And in a war of this scale, and you're hitting a BTR, potentially full of men who burn to death, has there been any issues you've seen amongst your guys of having maybe maybe not regret for that, but coming to terms with like, holy shit, I just cooked other young men alive. That reality of war comes true.
Like I've learned, it won't hit you here. It'll be after, when they get home or when they're not here anymore, is when they'll really think about it. So I think a lot of the guys just try to keep their heads in the game, so things like that don't come up often. But I had a friend he's a sniper, and he took out a target, and we talked after, and even being a sniper, he was still kind of indifferent about what he had to do. So with my experience and the things that I've been through, I sat him down and talked to him, and explained that it was a good thing. This was in an area where they were torturing people, they were taking them captive, and not allowing civilians to leave. So, but yeah, at the end of the day, it's something we're gonna have to live with after this, and I've learned that through experience for years of doing this. It doesn't ever make sense, but it doesn't usually affect you until after the fight, when you get home, and it just kind of pops up in the back of your mind.
Yeah. And are the Russians collecting their dead and wounded? Because I was talking with another foreign guy who said the biggest thing that affected him was, they basically had just waves of Russians coming towards them that they were mowing down. I should say, I don't know the truth in this either, but he said that for the next 24 hours we just heard young Russian men in the field just screaming for help for hours and hours, until they sort of just slowly, the voices, cried out. Is there any regard for them to come and get their soldiers, or any, I forgot the exact term, but they call it like a silent hour or something, where you can come and collect your wounded? Are they attempting that, or attempting to work with the Ukrainian command to come and get their dead?
No. I mean, from what I've heard and where my friends have been, I think they just leave them. Once they're lost, they're lost. It's not a big issue to them. I don't think they value life as much as people would like to think.
Yeah, and the scenes on the front line is something that I think there's very, very little footage of, because we both know that there's hundreds dying a day on both sides, and it's maybe not shown because it doesn't show the glory of war. You've spoken earlier that war is a hellscape. It's not Call of Duty.
Yeah.
Is there much within the Legion, within the Ukrainian command, people leaking information to the other side and having potential attacks like sprung early because there's been an information leak?
Yeah, not within the Legion, but within the Ukrainian side. Both my teams personally have dealt with leaks. Right before operations we were heading on, the Russians would show up and wait for us a couple hours before we were supposed to be there, or even a half an hour, where these are spots that we did a week or two of reconnaissance and no one was there. We were trying to utilize a point where we knew Russians wouldn't be, and the night of the operation, multiple nights in a row, as we get ready to cross a river, or as we get ready to go to the spot that we were going to infill in, the Russians would be out there waiting, or they'd have their helicopters up in the air circling that area. So, but a lot of that was east, where there are a lot of pro-Russians. Even the Ukrainians out there, the civilian Ukrainians didn't like the idea of us being there. They kind of wanted Russia to have the territory. So obviously it had to be in the military itself that was leaking it, because the civilians had no idea of our operation. But yeah, it's happened more than a few times to us.
And are you getting that from the other side too? Ukrainians who are within that red zone, are there people tipping off the Legion and or the Ukrainian command of where the Russian positions are? Is it going both ways?
No.
Right.
No. We haven't, from my team's perspective, we haven't got intelligence from any Ukrainians about Russian positions, so it usually just works against us.
Yeah. Well, mate, I really want to thank you for sitting down and talking with me. I do really appreciate it, and I understand that, you know, you guys hanging your neck out there to talk to me. I really do appreciate it.
Thank you.
Cheers. Is there anything else you'd like to say to the world, to Ukraine people? Any finishing remarks?
Fuck, man, that's a tough one. It's a tough one. Really don't have much to say, but Slava Ukraina.
Okay, thanks.